Welcome back, everyone, to Crime Desk Wednesday. This is Season 1, Episode 6. Today, we're asking you to cross a border with us. Not a physical one, you won't need your passport. But you will need maybe a willingness to look at governance differently, not just as, laws on paper, but as a system, one built on, flesh and blood, and the, frankly, brutal efficiency of immediate consequences. Now, before we really dive deep in this, just a quick but really important note from us. We're still pretty new, just getting started with this whole series. So if you appreciate this kind of detailed breakdown, this sharp analysis of organized power and how it works, please do remember to subscribe. Maybe hit that like button. It seems small, but that's support. It genuinely helps us. It lets us put the resources into bringing you these really comprehensive deep dives.
Yeah, absolutely. And your support couldn't come at a better time, really, because this month, Crime Desk Wednesday is actually running a special 3-part series. We're focusing exclusively on gangs and these parallel governance structures, specifically in Africa. And this deep dive we're doing today, this is part 1, we're stepping into what our sources call, quite chillingly, the other republic.
The other republic. That phrase just grabs you immediately, doesn't it? The whole idea, the central thesis, it's so disruptive because, at first glance, you look at the Republic of South Africa and it seems indivisible. It's supposed to be this beacon, right? Post-apartheid democracy. It has the flag, the president, the constitution, all written in this language of rights and freedom.
Exactly. But the material we're working from insists that just beneath that shiny formal surface, there's another country. The other republic, and it's humming along quietly, but powerfully. And look, this isn't just, pockets of messy, disorganized crime. We're talking about a comprehensive parallel state. It's got its own rulers, its own laws that actually function, its own generals, and it governs millions of people in really key, crucial places, townships, hostels, these sort of peri-urban centers.
Okay, so we're talking about areas where the formal state, the official government, is just, it's too weak. Or too slow.
Maybe too slow, maybe just too distant to actually matter in people's daily lives.
Yeah.
And this forces us really to face this core paradox of what governance even is. See, we're used to thinking of the legal system as a democracy of paper, based on elected leaders, laws written down, taxes collected.
A system we think we live under.
Right. And where that paper democracy is absent or it's just completely inefficient, it gets replaced. Replaced by what the sources call the dictatorship of proximity. And this distinction, it's everything. The official state. It relies on abstraction, distance, rules written far away. The shadow state. It relies on immediate presence, on absolute authority, right there, right now.
Let's break that down a bit more. That's crucial. So in the formal republic, we elect leaders, supposedly. In this other republic, the rulers. They're born, or maybe they're made through blood, through charisma, through violence.
That's it.
The formal state collects taxes based on income, pay slips, whatever. The shadow state. It extracts tribute. And that's based purely on fear.
Yeah, fear of consequence.
Official courts, they rely on due process, right? Which can take months, years.
If it ever arrives.
Exactly. The shadow state relies on punishment, on enforcers who deliver justice or their version of it immediately.
Absolutely. And here's the critical point. Both of these states, the formal one and the shadow one, they both claim to provide order. And honestly, in their own ways, brutal, localized, hyper-efficient, sometimes they both kind of succeed. They create predictability for the people living under their rule. So the choice people face on the ground isn't always between order and chaos. Sometimes it's between slow, bureaucratic order and, quick, violent order.
Okay. So our mission today, our deep dive, it's really a structural look, crossing the borders into this shadow geography. We're going to spend some serious time looking at 3 specific, frankly, terrifying groups. Groups that really stand as emblems of this political violence, this parallel administration.
That's right. And these 3 groups, they illustrate the different pillars holding up the shadow state, the political, the economic, the ideological. So first, we've got the Glebelands Hitmen. They really embody the regime of fear, political assassination as a tool.
Okay.
Second, there's the so-called Boko Haram of Mamelodi. Their focus is much more on economic control, institutionalized extortion. And finally, the Unkovu Youth Group. They're driven more by ideological militarization, a really warped sense of faith and purpose.
Okay, Glebelands, Boko Haram, Unkovu. But before we jump into Glebelands specifically, there's this initial insight you mentioned from the sources, the one that really changes how we have to view these structures.
Yeah, this is crucial. For decades, right, the way analysts talked about organized crime, it was always like an infection, a parasite, something weakening the body politic that just needed to be cut out, purged.
That makes sense. That's how we usually think about it.
But the source material we're looking at, it suggests we need a complete shift, a totally different metaphor. These structures, these violent groups, they aren't parasites, they're more like organs.
Organs.
Rogue organs maybe, but functional ones. They are actually performing essential work that the state abandoned. Things like protection, swift justice, however brutal income generation, even providing a sense of identity. So the other republic, it doesn't exist despite the formal democracy. In many ways, it exists because of the governance vacuum that democracy leaves behind.
Wow. Okay, so it's order, just in a darker, maybe more localized, possibly more effective dialect.
That's a good way to put it.
All right, let's start then. The political wing, the regime of fear, part 1. The Glebelands Hitmen.
Glebelands Hostel. Okay, so we're in eThekwini municipality. That's near Umlazi, which is one of the biggest townships in South Africa. And if you were just driving past it on the highway, apparently it looks completely unremarkable. Just a dense block of like red brick buildings.
Yeah, visually nothing special.
But the moment you start looking closer, the sources say, you realize those buildings, they form a kind of microstate.
Microstate, that's exactly the word. You hit it. These aren't just apartment blocks. The history here, the context is absolutely everything. These hostels, they are direct architectural relics of apartheid. They were literally built as functional cages.
Cages?
For black male laborers, yeah. Designed to be efficient, temporary, easy to control. To isolate men from their families, isolate them from political organizing. Okay, so democracy arrives, 1990s. The political system changes on paper, but the walls, the actual physical structures designed for control, they stay.
They stay. And the governance inside, it just dissolved, evaporated, leaving this huge power vacuum inside these thick, high walls.
And vacuums always get filled, really?
Always. And this vacuum, it was like an open invitation. Over time, it filled up with men. Men with guns, men with deep local knowledge, charisma maybe. They weren't elected. They were self-appointed administrators. And what made their authority really stick, what made it durable, is that political parties, often desperate for muscle on the ground, they started using these guys as enforcers, especially around election time or, disputes over contracts.
So that's the link. It creates this hybrid authority we see now.
Exactly. It's semi-political, semi-criminal, and within the walls of Glebelands, it's pretty much completely sovereign. It's a government, but without the paperwork. A hierarchy without elections, but one built on absolute, immediate, enforced obedience.
Wow. And the sources actually detail this hierarchy.
Oh yeah, it's clear. At the very top, you've got the kingpin, or sometimes they call him the general, or just, the boss. He's the ultimate decider. He decides who lives where, who gets access to municipal services, or who steals them, and ultimately who lives and who dies. His authority isn't based on some municipal bylaw. It's based on the immediate threat of violence.
And that power flows downwards?
Down through lieutenants, they manage specific housing blocks, maybe specific floors. Then down to the enforcers, these are often young men whose entire reputation, their standing, is built on demonstrating public violence, visibly. And at the bottom, you have the residents. The sources call them the citizenry bound by necessity. Their survival depends entirely on understanding how close they are to the kingpin's power and staying out of the way.
Which explains that chilling detail from the sources. Inside Glebelands, they don't hold political rallies. They hold funerals.
That's it. Every death is planned, it's meticulous, and every funeral becomes a message. Power there doesn't need a loudspeaker or a speech. It needs a silencer.
This brings us to this. It's a terrifyingly efficient concept, the source material calls assassination is bureaucracy. This is where it gets really chillingly detailed.
Exactly, bureaucracy. Because these killings, they're not random acts of passion. They are meticulously administrative. They are procedural. They are the ultimate form of dispute resolution in that system. If there's a disagreement maybe over who gets a specific room, or a lucrative municipal contract that someone's trying to steer, or if some local politician questions the kingpin's loyalty, a killing is issued, like an order. And it clarifies the hierarchy instantly. It redraws the chain of command. No ambiguity.
So it's not chaos, it's systemic management through elimination.
Precisely. And the Glebelands Hitmen, they've become specialists, highly specialized. They operate openly from the hostel as a base, taking contracts across the whole province, KwaZulu-Natal, killing councillors, local activists, business rivals, whoever the contract specifies.
And they see themselves as professionals.
Absolutely. They're not driven by ideology, even though politics often provides their target list. Their specialization is so refined that the sources actually detail this whole shadow market for death. They call it the economy of death. And the price, it varies. Depends on the target's profile, how difficult the job is perceived to be.
Wait, there's an actual rate card for political murder. That's just astonishing.
It's a functional market, yeah. A low-level political activist, maybe a counselor who's become a nuisance, that might go for, say, our 10,000 or 15,000, maybe 600, 900 US roughly, but a prominent community leader or a business rival who's interfering with major state tenders, big money contracts, that could easily command our 50,000 or more. Maybe 3,000 US plus. This isn't just crime. It's outsourced administration. It's lethal contracting.
It's grimly mirroring the efficiency of, like, the formal state's own contracting system.
In a way, yes. The hitmen are the contractors. Their reward isn't some political belief. It's survival and it's money. And they stick to a pretty clear code, apparently. Execute the contract cleanly, efficiently. Don't kill unnecessarily that wastes resources, brings unwanted heat. And try not to draw too much external police attention. Keep it contained.
And this efficiency, it feeds directly into what the sources call the economy of fear.
Yes. Fear inside Glebelands is the most stable currency there is. Money doesn't always move openly. There are no receipts, no formal taxes, yet everyone knows the exact price of everything, especially the price of their own safety.
So the tax system is really tribute, paid through whispers, through implied threat.
That's it. Businesses operating in or near the hostile zone, the taverns, the little spaza shops, the powerful taxi associations they pay, quietly, regularly, to stay safe. And violence, in this context, it's not just enforcement, it's actually accounting. Yeah. It keeps the system honest in its own brutal way. It runs smoother than any municipal bureaucracy because disagreement or non-payment has an immediate, potentially lethal cost.
Which leads to the psychology of it all, this idea of learned compliance.
Exactly. It moves beyond just external control. It becomes self-regulation. Residents internalize the regime, not because they agree with it, obviously, but because survival demands it. Even the architecture itself, these narrow corridors, the communal spaces, the total lack of privacy, it teaches submission. It's designed for control. Silence becomes a form of wisdom. Neutrality becomes the highest possible virtue. Just keep your head down.
We have to pause on that specific story from the sources. The case of Sizwe, it illustrates this perfectly, doesn't it?
It's harrowing. Sizwe was a young man. He witnessed a shooting, and maybe foolishly, maybe bravely, he gave an informal statement to the police. He tried to use the formal justice system.
Okay.
He was then summoned to a meeting by the Kingpin's people. His body was found shortly after. Message delivered. Finality.
But the truly chilling detail, the one that sticks with you, is what happened next.
Yeah. The Kingpin himself, the man who almost certainly orchestrated the killing, he attended Sizwe's funeral.
Attended the funeral.
He didn't speak, just stood there, hands clasped, silent, among the mourners.
That's not mourning, that's administration.
It's the final devastating piece of administration. He wasn't there to grieve. He was there as an embodiment of power, a silent reminder to every single person there, every resident, every relative, even any police officers watching this, is the consequence. This is what happens if you step out of line, if you talk. One killing, publicly remembered, tacitly sanctioned like that, it can govern that whole community for months. It reinforces the trauma, the memory of the threat.
And this violence, it's undeniably political then, not just local crime. It fused these ward-level rivalries, these patronage battles, usually over state contracts, right? Housing, sanitation, construction tenders.
Absolutely. The relationship is deeply symbiotic, mutually beneficial, in a perverse way. Local politicians, they desperately need the muscle. The hitmen provide it securing votes, silencing opposition, maybe ensuring their company wins the tender. And in return, the gangs get legitimacy, a degree of protection from prosecution, and crucially, a massive inflow of state money channeled through that political network.
So it becomes this hybrid entity, half democracy, half dictatorship.
Pretty much. The state calls them political killings when they're forced to report them, but the residents, having internalized the whole routine, they might just call it necessary maintenance, keeping the system running. It's a miniature dictatorship, born not out of some grand political theory, but out of sheer necessity and the weakness of formal institutions.
Okay, so if Glebelands is this kingdom built on the sheer efficiency of political fear, we need to shift gears now. Part 2, Boko Haram and Mamelodi. This is more like a thriving marketplace of control. Here, obedience seems to be bought and sold. The focus shifts from assassination to really sophisticated economic organization.
Yes, and we have to be absolutely clear about the difference here. We're in Mamelodi now, near Pretoria. And despite the name, which is obviously provocative, we're not looking at chaotic thugs, the Boko Haram here. They're organized, highly patterned, deeply, almost weirdly bureaucratic. I mean, the sources say they keep ledgers, they issue warnings that function like formal invoices if you haven't paid, they run incredibly effective debt collection services, they even do conflict arbitration for local businesses.
It sounds less like a gang and more like an extremely efficient, if totally criminal, shadow municipality.
That's precisely the core insight here. You nailed it. Mamelodi's official municipality, like so many others, it struggles to provide basic safety, policing, reliable services. Boko Haram just stepped right into that vacuum, and they established their own comprehensive administration over practically everything, every tavern, every spaza shop, every taxi route.
And compared to the slow, often unpredictable municipal system.
Their taxes, their protection fees, they're steady, predictable, their enforcement, immediate, absolute, and very publicly visible. As the sources really emphasize, justice, however brutal, however arbitrary it might seem, it arrives in an afternoon, not after months or years of formal legal processes that might go nowhere.
And that immediate consequence, that's what gives them their legitimacy.
Yeah.
In a way.
It's a huge part of it. The reality is, many business owners, they're facing constant threats from petty crime, stuff the police just can't or won't handle. So they view Boko Haram, however grimly, as maybe the only functioning government capable of guaranteeing stability for their business.
Let's talk about the name itself, Boko Haram. Is there any actual link to the Nigerian group, ideologically?
No, none at all ideologically. It seems they adopted the name purely as a psychological brand, a brand of authority.
Marketing through fear.
Exactly. It instantly signals we are not just petty street criminals. We are organized. We have absolute terrifying authority. It's branding through notoriety.
And they started, like many of these structures seem to, with a kind of veneer of doing good.
Yeah, often there's that origin story. They began as self-styled protectors of small businesses, ostensibly shielding them from, common thieves and burglars.
But that shifted.
Quickly, it institutionalized into a mandatory protection racket. The structure is described as almost quasi-military. There's a chairman at the top, lieutenants assigned to specific economic sectors, construction, taxis, shops, collectors who oversee specific territorial blocks. They achieve order through the threat of violence, but that threat is managed with administrative efficiency.
And their main income stream, their taxation, is this protection money. You mentioned R200 to R1000, weekly or monthly.
Yeah, depending on the size and type of business. And in return, they guarantee safety. Safety from break-ins, from robberies.
But the cynical genius, as the sources point out, is that the trouble they protect you from often comes from them or their associates in the first place.
That's the deeply perverse logic, yes. But the vast majority of business owners, they pay. Why? Because Boko Haram delivers on the guarantee of consequence far more reliably than the official police, the SAPS. Think about it. If your shop gets robbed after you've paid your protection money, the gang finds the thief, and the punishment. It's swift, it's public, and it's absolute. No doubt left in anyone's mind.
Wow. Okay. So that creates this really strange, perverse kind of equilibrium where violence, or the credible threat of it, becomes the functional foundation for just normal, predictable economic life.
Exactly. The gang becomes effectively indispensable. If you want business stability in that area, you deal with them.
And their role goes beyond just extortion.
Go much further. They run essentially a comprehensive parallel economy. They regulate prices for certain goods. They control supply chains, especially in the informal markets. They punish illegal operators, and illegal means anyone who isn't paying them, anyone non-compliant.
And you mentioned they even arbitrate business disputes.
Absolutely. Say one tavern owner feels ripped off by a supplier. They don't go to the small claims court. They go to the local Boko Haram lieutenant. The lieutenant convenes a meeting, hears both sides, makes a ruling, and that ruling is backed by immediate, credible threat. That speed, that finality. It's actually appealing to business owners who see the formal court system as hopelessly slow, maybe corrupt, definitely ineffective. The logic is cold but clear. Stability through coercion attracts trade. Businesses actually thrive, in a way, because the risk, while high, is controlled and predictable.
But this kind of power, It must rely heavily on their ability to negotiate with the formal state, as the sources put it. This isn't happening in isolation.
No, it's absolute infiltration. Deeply interwoven. Boko Haram's control isn't just despite the state. It's secured through active transactional collaboration with the very people and agencies who officially oppose them. Local politicians, they rely on them. For election security, making sure things go smoothly in certain areas, or maybe ensuring voter turnout in high-risk wards.
And the police, what's their role in this?
Well, the police are often underpaid, overwhelmed, maybe demoralized. The sources show they often turn a systematic blind eye. In many documented cases, they accept regular bribes. Sometimes these are even called consultation fees. Incredible.
Consultation fees.
Yeah, or they actively collaborate. Sharing intelligence, maybe facilitating the arrest of the gang's rivals, looking the other way at crucial moments.
The lines just blur completely.
Totally. You have Boko Haram leaders attending official community police forum meetings. Their collectors are negotiating payment schedules with formal business forums. In a real sociological sense, they function like highly efficient, if utterly ruthless, civil servants of the shadow economy.
And residents come to see their actions not as exceptional crime, but just efficient governance.
For many, yes. And that efficiency is reinforced internally, too. New recruits go through initiations. There's a code of silence, absolute obedience to the hierarchy. Defiance isn't tolerated. It means expulsion, public humiliation, or worse, death. And it's always public, reinforcing control. They keep score, not just in the money collected, but in the level of compliance they achieve.
The transactional morality of the residents you mentioned earlier seems key to this lasting.
It is. It's often a weary acceptance. You hear people say things like, look, they keep the order. If you pay your dues, you're fine. But it gets more complex because the members, using the profits from extortion, sometimes fund community needs. They might pay for funerals, buy school uniforms for kids, sponsor local soccer teams. Small things, but visible.
And that small, visible charity builds legitimacy.
Exactly. It's essential. The state often hands out abstract promises, deals with impenetrable bureaucracy. Boko Haram hands out tangible aid, immediate certainty. In a country scarred by decades of institutional failure, that immediate, tangible gesture, it carries enormous psychological weight.
And political power. So it's like a textbook dictatorship almost. Yeah. But sustained, not through constant random terror, but through this learned, predictable submission.
That's a good way to put it. The moment residents stop even imagining an alternative to the quick, consistent, brutal system Boko Haram provides, that's when the control becomes absolute.
And that control creates these invisible borders within the community.
Yeah. Residents navigating Mamelodi, they instinctively know when they're entering a gang-controlled zone. They adjust their posture, their tone, their language. In official government reports, this structure is an anomaly and a crime problem. But on the ground, for millions of residents, it's simply stability, a terrifying, darker kind of stability, where oppression, precisely because it's predictable, can actually feel safer than the chaos of an absent or ineffective state.
Okay, we've moved through the political fear of Glebelands, the economic control of Mamelodi's Boko Haram. Now we arrive at the third pillar. And this one feels, arguably more complex. The ideological wing. Part 3, the Unkovu Youth Group. The Children of Faith and Fire. If Glebelands sells fear and Boko Haram sells profit, the Unkovu's war, the sources say, is fundamentally for meaning?
Exactly. Meaning, this movement, it's born in the rural peripheries, places in KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape, areas characterized by really high structural unemployment, deep-seated corruption, and also a history of intense church revivalism. That mix is important. These young people are, as one source puts it really eloquently, fluent in the language of struggle, but illiterate in the rewards of peace.
They feel left behind, abandoned, promised democracy's rewards, but got unemployment, corruption from the very leaders they might have supported.
Absolutely abandoned. And the name itself, Unkovu, it translates roughly from isiZulu as zombie or maybe resurrected corpse. That's a profoundly deliberate choice of name. They see themselves as having been resurrected from the death of hope, from the political and economic death sentence they felt the formal state handed them. They frame themselves as soldiers in a holy war against that abandonment.
So they didn't start as a gang, but more like a youth fellowship, a religious movement that then mutated.
That's right. It started with religion, but their theology began to blend scripture with political grievances, with the burning desire for vengeance. The sources detail how the local leadership, often figures called umfundisi, which means teacher or preacher, how they shifted the focus. Systematically, holy oil used for blessing was replaced by, blessed bullets intended for execution. They position themselves as self-proclaimed prophets, bringing immediate divine justice where the secular law has completely failed them. It's faith weaponized into a highly disciplined, highly effective militia.
And the initiation rituals sound incredibly intense. Fusing belief with trauma, with military drills.
Oh, they're deep. They're transformative by design. Engineered to strip away the recruit's old identity and replace it with this collective, unified purpose. Recruits, usually young men, maybe 16 to 25 years old, they're subjected to long periods of fasting, chanting, things designed to push them into altered states. They're physically marked with religious symbols, crosses, flames, maybe signifying their devotion, their spiritual protection.
And the final ritual you mentioned, the most telling one.
It's terrifyingly symbolic. They're given a weapon, often a crude firearm, and they're told, essentially, this weapon, this is your scripture now.
Wow.
It's like a rebaptism in smoke and violence. Where the main promise isn't abstract forgiveness later, it's immediate power and purpose now. The group offers structure, brotherhood, a family rescuing these young men from social invisibility, from hopelessness. And within that structure, loyalty becomes faith. Questioning an order isn't just insubordination, it's questioning God's mandate given through the leader.
That structure, that belief, it makes them much harder to dismantle than the other groups.
Much harder, yeah. A purely criminal organization, you can arrest its leaders, maybe corrupt its members. But an ideological one like Unkovu, it demands conversion, not just compliance.
And discipline is enforced as holiness.
Exactly. Punishment for betrayal, for disobedience, it's called cleansing. It might involve forced isolation, public humiliation, intense physical abuse, cleansing the impurity. And they meticulously quote the Bible, but they twist it. They replace nouns to fit their own structure. So a verse about loving your brother becomes something like, "Thou shalt not betray thy brother," in Unkovu. This re-engineering of scripture creates this incredibly strong internal structure. It can't just be bought off or wrested away easily. A young man who believes he's killing for God, for righteousness, you can't just bribe him out of that mission.
But the politics still seeped in, inevitably. How did they make that transition from spiritual guardians to political enforcers?
Well, their early reputation for discipline, for purity, soon became a marketable service, a commodity. They started getting hired as intimidating security for political rallies, or deployed to intimidate rival factions, maybe suppress voters in certain areas. And as that happened, the gospel itself changed. Verses that once promised spiritual redemption were reinterpreted to justify execution.
Do the sources give a specific example of that twisted justification?
Yes, there are documented instances where members rationalize, say, burning down a rival church building. How? By claiming the people inside were false prophets, obstructing the true path to community salvation, which only Unkovu represented. Their mission becomes absolute, totalizing. The moral architecture of faith collapses inward on itself, leaving only this highly militarized theology of purity and summary punishment.
This group also seems to understand the power of image, of spectacle, maybe better than the other two. This aesthetic of righteous violence.
Oh, absolutely. This is central to how they survive and recruit, especially among younger, digitally native generations. They actively film their operations, their community cleanups, their punitive raids, their paramilitary-style drills. And they post these clips online. Platforms like TikTok, often overlaying them with popular gospel music or these uplifting rhythmic chants.
Transforming brutality into compelling content.
Precisely. It becomes spectacle. The imagery is controlled strict use of black and red colors, prominent display of crosses, fire. It transforms the violence into something that looks righteous, compelling. So they attract new recruits, not just through raw fear, but through fascination. They're offering an identity, turning personal suffering and rage into this marketable, compelling sense of purpose.
And this manufactured belief system, it fuels what the sources call the doctrine of sacrifice.
Yes. Death itself is redefined within the group. Dying isn't failure, it's seen as graduation. Yeah, a member killed in action, in a confrontation. They're believed to continue fighting spiritually for the cause. Funerals become these immense theatrical events. They're proof of the movement's purpose, its transcendence. This whole theology of martyrdom ensures the cycle just never ends. For every young man buried, maybe 3 more join, determined to finish what the perceived martyr started.
And that theological immediacy you mentioned seems key here.
It's crucial. Look, formal democracy demands patience, right? Decades of waiting for housing, waiting for a job, waiting for justice through the courts. Unkovu preaches immediacy, justice now, power now, even heaven effectively now through righteous action.
That urgency must be incredibly magnetic. especially for youth living in such profound economic despair.
Deeply, powerfully magnetic. Unkovu teaches them that the world outside their brotherhood is irredeemably polluted by corruption, by political failure, by sin. So to kill a traitor or a rival gang member or even just someone deemed impure, that's not murder. It's purifying the world. It's securing their own spiritual standing. This narrative of purity just erases all moral ambiguity. It creates a certainty so strong that empathy for the other, for the victim, simply cannot penetrate.
It feels like the ultimate power of ideological crime. It convinces the killer that they are saving, not destroying.
Exactly. They're not just a criminal gang in their own eyes. They're the fulfillment of a prophecy of a future where their belief replaces law entirely.
Okay, we've crossed these operational borders now. The political wing in Glebelands, the economic wing in Mamelodi, the ideological wing with the Unkovu Youth. So now, part 4, let's try to synthesize this to understand the full architecture of this other republic and what its implications really are. Terrifying implications.
Right. We've established these 3 functional pillars, haven't we? And seeing them together is crucial for understanding why this shadow state is so resilient.
So Glebelands first. That operates as the security wing. It's driven by fear. It maintains territorial control using political assassination as a tool. Its social contract seems to be pure survival. Obey, and maybe you get to keep existing.
That's the grim bottom line there. Then you have Boko Haram, that's the economic wing, driven by profit, maintaining commercial control through highly organized extortion and protection rackets. Its social contract is transactional. You pay, and in return, you get order and a measure of stability for your business.
And finally, Unkovu, the spiritual wing.
Yeah.
Driven by faith, or a warped version of it. Maintaining behavioral control through this religious militarization. Their contract is maybe the most profound.
Yeah.
You give total devotion, and in return, you get identity, purpose, ultimate meaning.
And what unites all 3? What's the common thread? They all compensate very directly for what the formal state demonstrably fails to provide. They offer certainty where democracy offers only vague promises. They offer immediate justice where the official law is hopelessly delayed. And perhaps most powerfully, they offer belonging and identity where mainstream society has effectively abandoned millions.
And for this whole system to function, it requires what the sources call a fundamental moral inversion within the other republic.
Absolutely. The formal morality, the one written in law books or taught in schools, it just breaks down under the pressure of survival. It gets replaced by a completely different set of ethics, tailored for navigating desperation.
So within these shadow structures, the rules get flipped.
Completely inverted. Silence equals wisdom. Loyalty, absolute loyalty, becomes the highest virtue. Violence isn't crime. It equals justice, the only justice available. Profit isn't greed. It equals survival. And faith, when weaponized like with Unkovu, equals absolute truth. You simply cannot apply formal moral standards, our external standards, to a system designed entirely to manage and exploit desperation.
And every small act these groups undertake, it reinforces their perverse legitimacy.
Every single act. When the gang, not the municipality, controls who gets water from the tanker during a drought. When their community patrols deliver instant, brutal justice for a theft. When their local commanders distribute food parcels. Each of these actions reinforces dependency.
And that dependency eventually becomes loyalty.
It hardens into loyalty, which then solidifies into a kind of perverse citizenship in the shadow state. The residents often aren't consciously choosing crime. They're choosing the service provider who actually delivers something tangible, something reliable, even if it's delivered through fear.
The real danger, then, isn't just that this shadow state exists alongside the republic. It's the infiltration. The idea that the other republic doesn't just exist beside democracy, but it grows through it, using the state's own institutions to shield itself.
That's the terrifying symbiosis. The line between criminal and civic just dissolves entirely. The sources document case after case. Gang leaders transitioning seamlessly into roles as elected local councilors, leveraging their coercive power for political gain. Extortionists using their illicit profits to become respected, quote-unquote, legitimate businessmen in the formal economy. Preachers becoming political strategists, using faith for mobilization. The hostels, the taverns, they stop being just places of crime. They become the functioning ministries of this shadow government.
Which brings us to the really difficult part of this analysis. What the source calls the philosophical deadlock, or the mirror test.
Yeah. The formal republic, the one on paper, it governs through abstraction. Through policy documents, slow bureaucracy, the illusion of distance. The other republic, it governs through proximity. Through flesh and blood. through scars, silence, immediate consequence, and the constant visceral memory of violence.
And the uncomfortable, almost unbearable truth that the sources really emphasize is this.
It's that the First Republic, the formal democracy in many ways, it cannot currently survive without the perverse consistency, the brutal order provided by the Second. They are essentially trading partners, locked in a complex, deeply immoral economy.
Explain that trade. How does that work?
Well, the state looks away from the assassinations in Glebelands because that violence conveniently keeps political rivals quiet, maybe maintains a fragile local balance. The police look away from Boko Haram's extortion because, frankly, that extortion keeps the streets safer from petty crime than the official police force often can, keeps the business owners from complaining too loudly. Politicians secretly depend on the ability of this localized violence to maintain stability in their wards, to deliver votes, to ensure projects run smoothly.
So we end up with a democracy of convenience, but one that's fundamentally underwritten by coercion, by violence.
Exactly. The problem isn't simply that the other republic exists. It's the formal republic's deep-seated systemic dependency on it. Dependency for stability, dependency for the ability to project even an image of control.
The real danger, therefore, isn't some sudden revolution, some dramatic collapse.
No. The sources argue the real danger is what they term the quiet apocalypse. It's slow absorption. It's normalization. Children grow up in these areas knowing nothing else. They learn to call protection fees taxes. They see funerals for hitmen or gang members as graduations.
So by the time the former republic finally wakes up, finally notices the full extent of the infiltration, the depth of the moral inversion,
it might be too late, because the alternative structure has already won the argument on the ground. It has become, in the eyes of many living under it, the truer version of governance.
cruel, yes, brutal, absolutely, but ultimately consistent, immediate, understandable. The day South Africans collectively start calling this predictable brutality order instead of chaos, that's the day the democratic ideal quietly dissolves, crushed beneath the weight of these localized, brutally functional shadow states. Wow. Okay. We have taken quite a journey today. A structural exploration deep into Glebelands, the security wing built on political assassination, into Mamelodi's Boko Haram, the economic wing built on organized, bureaucratic extortion, and into Unkovu, the spiritual wing built on weaponized faith and that desperate search for identity.
And what we've seen, I think, is that these groups, they aren't just some external threat to the state. In many ways, they are the constitutional mirror, reflecting back what the formal republic looks like when you strip away the slow bureaucracy, the ideals, and leave only the raw, immediate function of survival and control.
They are the republic of flesh, offering certainty, immediacy, consequence, where the republic of paper offers promises, delays, and endless grinding debate.
And as we wrap up this really complex analysis for today, we have to acknowledge the devastating cost, the ultimate cost of this parallel existence on the millions of people living within these zones, navigating these realities every day. The hope, perhaps, isn't that the violence will just vanish overnight. That feels naive, given the depth of the structural vacuum we've discussed.
So what is the hope then, if any?
Well, the hope, as hinted at in the source material, might lie somewhere else. It's the idea that maybe, just maybe, beneath every act of violence in this country, beneath the tribute paid in fear, beneath the brutal discipline, beneath the forced devotion, there is still memory.
Memory.
Yeah, the memory of liberation, the memory of the constitutional dream, however faded, the memory of a democracy that was actually promised to deliver real justice, real safety, real opportunity. And sometimes maybe that collective defiant memory is the only thing left that's still loyal to the fragile idea of a single unified republic.
That's a powerful thought to end on, a difficult one. We really encourage you, if this has sparked something, to explore these concepts further. We've put comprehensive notes, links to related articles, and a breakdown of the source material we used today up on our blog. Please check that out.
And of course, please check out the rest of our YouTube channel. There are more episodes of Crime Desk Wednesday there, including part 2 of this special series coming up next week, and all our other shows covering geopolitical analysis and related topics.
Thank you truly for taking this deep and sometimes dark look into the shadow state with us today.